Of a deal in the COP21 Summit in Paris, but there are hurdles on the ground level still. Remember, the climate summit has been extended by 1 day as of now. However, differentiating between developed and developing nations and finance remains key issues at the COP21 Summit. CNBC's Steve Sedgwick, who's been tracking the story, filed this report.
It's the same old sticking points, isn't it? I've just come out of a briefing, actually, with Lord Stern. You remember Nick Stern, the 700-page report. They're talking about the same old issues: decarbonisation, 1.5 versus 2 degrees, differentiation, loss and damage. You get it. You see the point. But, I mean, again, Nick Stern making the point that there's a lot of good in this report as well. So I think we shouldn't just look at the negatives. I know there are a lot of negatives and a lot of sticking points as well, but there are a lot of things, including this phrase, which everyone's trying to get their head around now, which is a new one, not decarbonisation, but greenhouse gas neutrality by 2050, and it's interesting to see which one of those two bits will make it into the final text. So anyway, about these big problems, we know they're there. They've been there for a long, long time. Very interesting that the Xi Jinping conversation is going on with President Obama, because it's the Chinese negotiators and confusion about what their stance is on monitoring and 5-year stock takes that has actually kind of upset a few within the EU and elsewhere, as we discussed earlier with Mr. Canetta's interview as well. So it'll be interesting to see if the two big leaders, who are also, let's face it, the two biggest emitters on this planet, 40% of global emissions come from China and the US, can sort out some of the terminology in that deal. And also, we're never one to pass up on a cheap prop. So I've got this advert from the International New York Times for you. I thought you'd like this one as well. This is from the activist group Avaz. We've got around about 42 million members. I think what flattering photos as well. I mean, how good does Xi and Merkel and Modi and Obama, they look great, don't they? Anyway, just invoking the spirit of Star Wars in order to try and to galvanise some of the leaders to action here in Paris.
Those sticking points have to do with fundamental principles. Differentiation, for example. Developed and developing economies need to figure out a way in which they can retain the principle of differentiation, but no longer in the sense of one group does something, the other one doesn't. I think in actual terms, we have already surpassed that point. I think, secondly, the financing issue remains a challenge, because the promise of the 100 billion, which many consider to be charity, and I would argue is actually the best investment we can make in a global climate response. And then there is this question: how much risk are we willing to take, or are we going to signal here in Paris that the world actually should aim for 1.5 degrees as the maximum threshold for global warming, or stick to what it had agreed in Copenhagen, 2 degrees?
All right. Now,